Welcome. For those of you who don't know me, I am Tom Hoffman. I'm the proud son of Emmons shipmate Ed Hoffman. I'm honored to be a member of the USS Emmons Board of Treasurer of the organization, and I'm especially proud to be here tonight to host this virtual reunion. The Emmons Legacy Committee was excited to take on the pandemic by using this opportunity to bring everybody together virtually. This year, the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Okinawa, to celebrate that special bond that we all share, family, friends of the USS Emmons. And by the way, if you're here, you are family. The Emmons family, as we proudly identify ourselves, didn't take shape overnight. 67 years ago, October 1953, at the Hotel Bradford in Boston, 59 Emmons shipmates came together for the first time since the demise of their beloved Emmons. The reunions followed in 1954 and 1955, and then took off with the shipmates they took time off then with the shipmates preoccupied with starting a family and earning a living. In 1974, through the efforts of shipmates Dave Jensen and Jerry McLevy, they resumed the reunions, meeting every other year. And unlike the reunions back in the 50s, when the men naturally gravitated socially to the shipmates that they spent their time with on the ship, now it no longer mattered to them if you're a plank owner, if you were there for North Africa, Normandy, Okinawa, Cherbourg. They all just simply considered themselves men of the end. While they continued to meet, the bond and relationships just continued to flourish over the years. In 1989 came Admiral Billingsley's The Emmons Saga, the book chronicling the history of the ship and her crew. In 1990, with the help of Rich Angelini, the Emmons Association established a website, resulting in new contacts with shipmates, their families, and friends. And of course, the discovery of the Emmons wreck in 2001, and the first memorial service at the site held by Rich Ruth and John Chandler. In 2002, the close relationships that had developed over the years and the interest shown by family and friends who increasingly started attending these reunions gave rise to the need to meet every year, and they've met every year annually since then. All of this over the years strengthened the family, the Emmons family, bringing in shipmates, brothers, sisters, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews, friends to the reunions, all of whom now share that special bond first celebrated by those 59 shipmates at the first reunion back in 1953 at the Hotel Bradford. They found a way to stay connected. They found a way to stay connected all those years, and now they've passed that on to us. We, the Legacy Committee, the board, we were not about the COVID pandemic weaken that bond. So welcome everybody to the 36th USS Emmons reunion. It is your USS Emmons reunion. Hopefully we can resume in person next year at Annapolis, Maryland, and we invite all of you to come and join us there to celebrate and learn more about this special Emmons legacy with all your Emmons family. That's September 23rd through the 26th. And finally, I want to remind you to stay up to date with the Emmons Association activities by joining our Facebook group, the USS Emmons Reunion, and by visiting our website at ussemmons.org. We'll be making sure that all those registered for this reunion are added to our mail list, so you'll be receiving our newsletter and other information throughout the year. And if there's anyone else out there, other than those who registered themselves, want to be included in that mail list, just simply email us at ussemmons@gmail. So a little bit of Zoom housekeeping. I did mute everyone. We need to avoid as much background noise as we can. So I'm going to hit the mute button every once in a while, just in case. For you Zoom newcomers, there's two views that are available, active speaker and gallery view. The active speaker is the one that should have defaulted to, so that whoever's speaking shows up large on your screen. If that's what you're seeing now, you are in that active speaker mode. And then you have thumbnails of everyone else. There's also a gallery view. If you want to play around during the reunion, that just gives you thumbnails of everybody. And you can scroll through everybody, and whoever's speaking gets highlighted. The method to switch between the two, if you want, if you're on a mobile device, there should be a button up in the top left corner, or you can just swipe left or right. If you're on the laptop, I think in the top right, there's a toggle button that says speaker view, gallery view. If you click on that, it just toggles back and forth. But we recommend speaker view, so you see the speaker nice and large on your screen. We will be using Zoom's raise hand option for the speaker question and answer portions to avoid everybody speaking over themselves. And that's just, you should see a option on your screen for participants. If you click or tap on that, you'll see, hopefully you'll see a raise hand button in there that you can tap on or click on in the event you have a question. And finally, a warning to those of you new to Zoom, although there's not too many of us anymore, but those of you who are new, Zoom can be pretty impersonal compared to meeting in person. There's very little, the personal interaction is very limited, unlike meeting face to face. There will be some snafus like we already had there. Some awkward times. I read once of a meeting that was going on, and the fella had to go to the restroom, so he took his phone in with him, but he knew enough to stop the video. So in order to stay in the meeting, he went in, he stopped the video, but he didn't turn off his microphone. Can be quite embarrassing, and I hope now that you guys all heard that we don't have a situation like that tonight, please. Finally, I want to bring your attention, we struggled the past few weeks with the video, showing video over Zoom, both with Kurt Reese, John Dawkins, some videos we're going to be showing. We worked best we can to get them the best quality that we can, but there's so many variables with bandwidth and internet speed and so forth that they are going to appear somewhat choppy. So I just ask your patience and understanding as we go through the evening. And I do have one more announcement. Unlike previous reunions, this year the Legacy Committee was able to convince the board to allow us to have an open bar. So please help yourselves, just drink responsibly. We have a great turnout today. I'm pleased to tell you we have 3 shipmates with us. We'll be introducing them a little later, but Tony Esposito, George Flory, and Grover McMichael. If I'm missing any, I know there are a few more out there I'm not aware of, but if you could send me a message through the chat, I'd appreciate it. And we'll be sure to mention that. The meeting virtually has made it possible for the attendance by many of you who otherwise are unable to make our in-person reunions. We had, last I checked before we started, we had 111 registrations. Of course, that means there's many more because there's at least one person, often at least 2 people at each registration. You're coming in from 28 states across the United States and 4 countries. I can tell you, shipmate Tony Esposito, Tony, I know you're out there. You win the award for the most family and friends registered. Last count, again, was 13 people, 13 registrations representing Tony. So the award you get, Tony, is simply our honor and respect we have for you and all your family that's so supportive. We love you, Tony. We're glad you could be here.
I'm gonna have Tony say hi real quick. Let's see if I can get a better.
Hi, Eddie. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Tony.
Good. Good. Hello to everybody.
Great to see you. You got lots of family and friends here watching.
Yeah, he said thanks.
All right.
We'll see.
That's great. we'll get back to you a little later then, Tony. We were very excited to see so many of you registering that up until now you've been unable to get to a reunion. We want to welcome each and every one of you especially, and we hope that if you're able to travel, perhaps your experience tonight might help you find a way to join us next September in Annapolis. That being said, I would like to send out a poll. I want to find out how many of you are attending your first reunion. I have a poll here that I'll send out. It asks if you or anyone watching with you are attending your first USS Emmons reunion. So it should appear on your screen. If you would, go ahead and reply. And while we wait on that, we also have family members we want to welcome representing shipmate families we haven't heard from until this year. That includes families of Walter Blair, Richard Ellsworth, shipmate Raymond Wilder, Lewis Hudson, Earl Hobart, and Milan Kabani. Hopefully I'm not missing anybody, but we're very excited to finally connect, and we hope to get to know all of you here representing them a little better. And we invite you to next year's reunion as well. All right, I'll end that polling. Looks like we have quite a few. We'll share that with all of you so you can see it. So you can see there are 19 attending their first reunion by themselves, and then there's 6 more that have 2. That's 1. So there's and then there's 1 with 4 or more. So we'll compile those results. We'll share them all with everybody at the next reunion. I'm sorry, in the next newsletter. Anyway, as I was saying, for next year, September 23rd to 26th in Annapolis, Maryland, we will be touring the Naval Academy. And as I've said, if you've never been able to attend, we'd love to see you next year. Last year, we had 16 attending for their first time. Registration information will be coming out in the spring, and it'll be available on our website and Facebook and so forth. So it'll be, you'll be able to find it. And that'll come out in the spring, April, May, sometime like that. Before we get started, I do want to extend wishes for a speedy recovery to any families, any of you families out there with a member affected by the COVID virus. And finally, I want to ask that you keep our Emmons Association President and Emmons shipmate, Armand Jolly, in your thoughts as we proceed through the evening, as his recent illness precludes him from participating. Again, welcome everyone. We'll do a quick overview of the agenda. We'll review a few business matters. We'll go over some Emmons happenings over the past year. We'll hear from some special guests. Some of you had the opportunity already to talk to John Dawkins before we got started. He's the renowned British artist. We reported on him last year. John chose the Emmons as a subject for one of his 4 U.S. naval ships that he built from scratch, a model. John will be here to talk with us. John Chandler. John, along with Rich Ruth, was among the divers who discovered the Emmons wreck back in 2001. We're happy to have John here with us. And we'll get a report from our Far East Bureau, also known as Kurt Reese, in Okinawa, Japan. You'll get to meet this year's Griffin Emmons Scholarship recipients and hear their essays. And finally, There won't be any honor guard, there won't be any 21 gun salute or taps, but that won't stop us from holding our annual memorial service, honoring the memory of the 60 shipmates lost at Okinawa, as well as Emmons family members lost this past year. And we'll get a look at Kurt's video of our Okinawa Divers Friends Memorial that they conducted last April at the site of the Emmons. So sit back, relax, we'll get moving. Real quick, we'll get some business out of the way. Normally at the reunions, at our Saturday morning business meeting, we cover the treasurer's report and go over all the finances. We're going to save that for time's sake. We're going to put that in the next newsletter that'll come out later this year. But I can tell you now, we are financially sound. The board has voted to keep membership dues the same, which is $25 for individuals, discounted $40 for couples, and $5 for junior members 18 and under. A mailing on that will go out through the US mail and email. But we do want to tell you how excited we are about the junior members that we have this year. That's that $5 membership, 18 years and under. Included as junior members this year are the great-grandchildren of numerous shipmates, including Thaddeus Tenrowitz, Armin Jolly, Billy Ray Deese, Ed Hoffman, Harold J., Ed Crom, William Copeland, and the great-grandniece of shipmate Donald Yecky. So we're just excited about the youngsters. You can never start them too young and get them to help carry that Emmons legacy forward. I also want to take this opportunity to tell you this past week we received a check in the mail from Kurt Reese and our Okinawa diver friends for $2,805 raised this past year for our scholarship. That brings the total raised by these guys to over $13,000 for the scholarship. And Kurt, I know you and Chuck are out there, Mike Boring also, and others from your diving community. I know you're out there with us tonight, and you know how grateful we are for your continued support of the Scholarship Fund. Just phenomenal. Thank you very much, all of you guys. Earlier, I mentioned that how many we have registered, but we know there's a lot more in attendance than just the numbers registered, because there's at least one of you, 2, 3, 4 out there watching. So I got another poll here quick, if you don't mind. And I want to find out how many, we want to get an idea how many people are attending. I think I said we're at 111 or 113 registrations, but we want to find out, get an idea of how many of you are actually out there. So are you attending just yourself? Are there 2 of you, 3 of you? Give you a minute to do that for us. We'll compile those responses, share that in the next newsletter as well. All right. We'll end that polling and move on. So it's been another exciting year for the Emmons Association. The USS Emmons was featured on the History Channel's Drain the Oceans documentary. One episode this season featured the Emmons and her encounter with the kamikazes in Okinawa. If you missed it, don't worry, it's available on nationalgeographic.com. The episode name is The Last Wrecks of World War II. And this documentary contained the only known footage we've ever seen that we know exists of the Emmons at sea. So again, that's nationalgeographic.com, and the episode name is The Last Wrecks of World War II. It's a pretty amazing show. Speaking of which, if you visit our website, on the photos and videos page, you'll be able to see that short video. It's 5-10 seconds of the Emmons at sea. So we have a link to that there on our website. You'll also see photos of many of the shipmates there on our website, but we have a lot missing, a lot of missing shipmate photos. So if any of you, we have a lot of new people here tonight. It's a lot we haven't heard from before. If you have photos of your loved ones from their times of service, please scan them, send them in. If necessary, you can send the originals to us. The address is on the website, and we'll be sure you get the originals back. Also on the photos page, there's a photo of the Emmons signed by over 50 of the shipmates in 1943, and I have that here for you. Coming. Wait for it. There we go. Hopefully everybody can see that. I just got a message that my internet connection is unstable, so that's not a good thing, but hopefully everyone can see the ship. This ship, the original photo was entrusted to the association this past year by the family of shipmate John McCarthy, who gave his life aboard the Emmons at Okinawa. John's niece, Kara Marling, tells us that John brought the photo home the last time he saw his family in Youngstown, Ohio. Our sincere appreciation is extended to Karen and all the family for sharing this piece of Emmons history with us. We will always treasure it. And while we're on the subject of treasures, we were also entrusted to our care this past year was the Navy Cross. Posthumously awarded to Ensign Ross T. Elliott, Jr. The Navy Cross, of course, is the Navy's award for extraordinary heroism. It's well documented how Ensign Elliott sacrificed his own life to save the life of several of his men during the Okinawa attack. His nephew Ross placed it in our care in the spirit of honoring all the lost and wounded Emmons crew members and all whose bravery was unseen and unsung. Ross, we're extremely grateful to you and your family for the thoughtfulness in honoring us with this custodianship. I know you're out there, Ross. Thank you. We appreciate it. And both the photo and the Navy Cross will be accompanying us to our reunions in the future, so everyone can see. Our friends in Okinawa diving community, headed by Kurt Reese, replaced the memorial plaque on the ship with this exact replica, and it is an exact replica. It's fabricated by the same company used for the original 17 years ago. There's been concern about rapid deterioration on the ship. So the original plaque, which the shipmates had placed there in 2003 to honor their lost shipmates, that'll now be given a more secure place of honor at the USS Emmons Training Center at Camp Shields, Okinawa, as it continues to help share the Emmons story with others. Kurt provided us with a video of the plaque replacement process, which is quite compelling. You can go on our website and you'll be able to see that. And we're going to hear from Kurt shortly too. Sherry Yecke has been working on the new edition of the Survivor Report publication. It's pretty close to completion. Here you can see some of the nearly finished product. Sherry, by the way, is the daughter-in-law of Dennis E. Yecke. Dennis's brother, Donald, sacrificed his life at Okinawa. If you're not familiar with the survival reports, while being evacuated from the damaged ship at Okinawa, Lieutenant Griffin, he took it upon himself to have the survivors write their experiences from that day. A compilation of those handwritten accounts was put together and distributed to the shipmates back in the 80s, in early 1980s, I believe it was. Many of them are difficult to read, as you can see. Here's an example. But it's kind of understandable since you consider the stress these guys were under, the poor quality of the copies, and simply the penmanship and the injuries that they had suffered. Recognizing the value of these reports, Sherry spent the past year transcribing these reports to produce an updated edition. So there's the final transcribed version of the handwritten account. This will contain both the handwritten and the transcribed versions of each report, and she's completed the transcription of over 60 reports. It's now in the process of organizing and formatting the publication prior to having it printed. And there's the index at the end, which will refer you to where you can find any of the shipmates named here. Once it's completed, we'll be taking orders before the year ends so we can get them in the hands of as many Emmons family members and friends as possible. So watch the newsletter, Facebook, and website for updates.
Tom, this is Sherry.
Yes.
Could I make a comment? The document, you mentioned that there were 3 families who were attending the reunion for the first time. 2 of the handwritten reports are from Walter Blair and Lewis Hudson. And so I just wanted their families to know that they will be included in this. Also, there is not a report from Kobani, but he is mentioned in a number of the other handwritten reports.
Yeah, you see
the final document is 533 pages long. So as we go forward with publication and such, we're trying to keep the price as reasonable as possible, and we'll be providing either a PDF version on a flash drive or the actual bound hard copy, paperback copy for purchase by members of the Emmons Association.
Very good. And what's the timeline on that, Sherry, do you think?
I will be able to have a firm cost on printing probably next week. The PDF, all the various PDF parts of this report have been collated. I've put them all together into one document. So the flash drives will be available, of course, before the hard copies, but the printer that I'm working with can get the hard copies out within about 30 days.
Got it. So we just have to nail down the costs and the logistics in getting them shipped out and actually have them printed and get the orders done.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sherry. Appreciate you and
You're welcome.
all the work you've done on it. It's terrific.
Well, it was an honor to do it.
No, thank you. All right. Okay, and one more thing, Mike Boring, another one of our diver friends in Okinawa, Mike Boring. He's a former Marine professional underwater photographer. He provided us a live virtual tour of the ship back, I think it was in April. Mike's narrated tour provided us a very captivating up-close look at the Emmons in her final rescue phase. And it was also Mike who led the charge to raise funds for that plaque that we were just discussing. And that was last year, was the fundraising. Now the plaque is in place.
She's gonna be right back.
We are grateful to have Mike there as part of the team watching over the ship. Mike, we're glad you can be here. I think you're out there somewhere. Glad you could be here with us tonight, or actually this morning.
I am, Tom, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Okay, Mike. We do have 3 special guests here with us tonight. They've all graciously agreed to talk and say a few words. Following each one, we're going to have a little time for questions that you may have. When we get to that point, again, to avoid people talking over each other, we're going to use that hand raise option to indicate if you have a question, at which time we'll call on you individually. If you have trouble with that, actually for the hand raise, you should see a participants on your screen somewhere. You would click on participants and hopefully then you see a hand raise button that you can click on, and that will raise a hand that I can see, and then I can call on you. If you have trouble with that and you prefer, you can just simply email us questions at ussemmons@gmail.com, and we'll be glad to forward them on to the speakers and we'll get back to you. The last time the USS Emmons was in the vicinity of England was June 1944, but there have been some sightings recently, although it's a much smaller scale. Last spring, the Emmons newsletter reported on an accomplished artist, John Dawkins, in Great Britain, and the model he constructed from scratch of the USS Emmons, one of only 4 US naval ships that he chose to build. The others being, correct me if I'm wrong then, John, the USS San Francisco, the Oakland, and the Annapolis. Needless to say, we're excited to learn of John's interest in attending today's reunion. He's graciously accepted our invitation to share a few words with you regarding his venture into building the model warships and his decision to choose the Emmons as a subject. And I've truly enjoyed getting to know John these past few weeks, working with him on this. You'll find he has a sincere passion for naval history, both his own Royal Navy and our US Navy. John prepared a brief video tour of the model for us, which I'm going to share with you in a second. And then I'll introduce John for a few words and to answer some questions.
USS Emmons. Warship model by John Dawkins. This is a model of the USS Emmons, a brave ship and crew that fought throughout World War II, only to perish in the last days of this war off the coast of Okinawa. She was hit by 5 kamikaze planes in the space of 20 minutes, a devastating experience for a vessel of any size, let alone a ship of a destroyer's dimensions. This model is entirely scratch built to a scale of 1/192nd. The model is 21 3/4 inches overall. I started with an accurate set of plans that had been redrawn from the original builder's plans. My other main reference was US Navy quality dockyard photographs, which were useful for the fine detail. The basic hull is carved in basswood, and the hull plating is strips of paper wood glued in place. The deck is thin plastic card affixed to the wooden hull. Most of the other structures are made from different thicknesses of plastic card. This material is also used to construct the 5-inch 38 turrets, the Mark 37 Director, parts of the 40mm and 20mm guns too. Brass rod is used for gun barrels, torpedo tubes and mainmast. Stanchions are made from stretched plastic sprue, as are pipe guards, cable runs, mast elements, ladders, etc. This is the aft superstructure with the aft 5-inch guns, 2 twin 40mm guns and the torpedo tubes. The searchlight platform is just visible too. This is a view of the quarterdeck with the 2 aft 5-inch guns, the 2 depth charge tracks and depth charge throwers. A detailed view of the bridge structure. Grid items such as the ladders and the Mark 37 radar antenna are made from stretch sprue, laid out as a grid on a former. Liquid styrene cement is carefully coated onto the grid. When dry, the grid items are sliced out with a scalpel. All the sub-assemblies are built first and painted before being assembled onto the finished hull. The model took 350 hours to build and won a medal in the British Model Engineering Exhibition. Thank you for taking the time to view this model. In memory of the crew of USS Emmons, DD 457 DMS 22.
That's incredible, John. As I told you before, I picture the shipmates gathered around your model, just telling all the stories and just all these stories that would surface as they're reminiscing about the good times aboard the Emmons and the bad. So John grew up near the Thames estuary in southeastern Great Britain, and likely what inspired his maritime paintings, which would have been exhibited in numerous galleries in and all around London. In turn, his lifelong interest in naval history is responsible for his interest spreading to building model warships. John has 3 sons, 3 grandchildren, and currently lives with his wife, Teresa, in rural Suffolk, about 120 miles northeast of London. If anyone has a question, feel free to use the raised hand function when the spirit moves you. We're pleased to have you on board, John. I know it's after midnight there for you. Thank you for staying up with us. I'm hoping you can start out by telling us why you chose the Emmons as one of your 4 US warships. And you'll need to unmute yourself again.
Oh, is that better?
There we are. Yeah, sorry.
Got you, yeah.
I muted everybody
Great.
during the video because it was getting a little noisy, but good to have you back, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Tom.
Tell us
Okay, it's very late here.
Yeah, why the Emmons?
Well, it was the Emmons. I had never seen a model of a Benson Gleaves destroyer before. Everybody seemed, if they do models of US destroyers, they tend to do a Fletcher class for some reason. I don't know why. But I chose to do the Benson class destroyer because I'd never seen this model before, a model of this. So it was a new challenge. I had nothing to compare it to. And of course, as many of you will know, there was about 75 vessels in the class. So why did I choose the Emmons? Well, I suppose I did some research on individual ship histories to find out which vessels had, if you like, the most spectacular careers. And I think, I mean, it was quite a long time ago, but I think I sort of settled on the Emmons because its career spanned the beginning and the end of the war, and it had a pretty comprehensive career, both in the European theatre and in the Pacific theatre. It seemed to be one of those vessels that delivered fully for its expense. I mean, its crew and the ship itself gave very good value for money overall. And I think that is probably what drew me to it more than anything else. It's still a strange coincidence, I have to say, that of all the vessels I could have chose, I chose the Emmons. And this model is 20 years old, so this is not something that was decided in the last couple of weeks, and it wasn't influenced by finding the wreck either. This model was completed 20 years ago, so it was odd that I had that then. It's a very, very strange thing. I mean, it's just a happy coincidence. That's it, Tom, really.
What were your thoughts when you heard or read about the wreck being discovered? having had the model?
Well, it was interesting because I was doing a general Google search on the ships that I'd modelled, the other three as well, and I did a search on Emmons, and some of the wreck footage came up out of a Google search, and I was able to view it on YouTube. And then I found other stuff on YouTube, like the wonderful video that your father did, Tom, as well. I found that, and I became intrigued by the ship, the fact that I had the model here, and there was this association and all this material out in the States. And it was at that point that I thought, well, I'll email Tom, because I obviously had your email address, and just tell him what my part of this was. It was really the wreck. It was the footage of the wreck that probably attracted my attention first to the existence of the association. And it grew out of that. And I suddenly realized this was a whole story about the Emmons that had carried on since the war. And I was very intrigued by it, actually, very intrigued, because veterans associations are not that common in this country. I could spend hours trying to explain what that was, but and I don't know how many veterans associations there are of US warships, but I think there's a lot more out there than we have here. So I found it wonderful that I'd actually discovered this organisation, which, for this odd coincidence that had come about, strangely just attracted me to the subject, and hence I contacted you, Tom.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Emmons family officially.
Yeah, well, I've derived enormous pleasure from it as well, as you know, Tom. I mean, it's an enormous experience for me because I've built a model first of all, and now I've done a video of it as well. So I'm learning all the time. It's making me learn new stuff all the time.
You get questions about the Emmons or the various ships when you exhibit them, or when you exhibit?
Sorry.
You get questions specifically about the Emmons and its history when you were exhibiting it?
What, from anyone else?
Yeah, there.
Not really. No, not at all. I mean, I felt cut off with my models here, really. I mean, since I produced them, they've just been in my house, and I've just viewed them, and there's been very little exposure of them to the outside world at all since they were first exhibited over 20 years ago. Yeah. Sadly, the saddest thing about all this, from my personal point of view, is my eyesight and my steadiness of my hand makes it impossible for me to construct models like this. I couldn't build another model like this now. The fine work that goes into them. I was looking at it. I've got it in front of me. Can you see, Tom? I've got it in front of me here.
Yes.
When I look at the fine work that I did 20 odd years ago, I can hardly believe that I did it, because I thought, how the hell did I do that? And I couldn't do it now. I couldn't do it. My eyes and my hands are just not steady enough. I just couldn't do it. Sadly, I wish I could, but I couldn't. So I paint instead. It's a lot easier. Painting is a lot easier than this.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
No, painting is a lot easiher than this. Yeah, very, very. I just can't. This is beyond me now. The work is so fine. It's just beyond me. I know that. Sadly.
John, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and for sharing it with all those there across the pond, as they will.
Yeah.
Your passion to honor the Emmons and her crew through your God-given talents is very much appreciated. I hope this is the beginning.
Thanks, Tom.
I hope this is the beginning of a long relationship, John. Thanks again.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. Cheers.
I hope you enjoy your evening.
Cheers.
In the summer of 2000, Okinawa fishermen spotted oil, which the Japanese Coast Guard suspected was a wreck leaking oil. Using remote control cameras, the Coast Guard spotted something but couldn't quite identify what it was. They were determined to identify the object, and the determination was on Rich Ruth and John Chandler. They did their research on the internet. They're two local divers in the area, and they were determined to find out what this was and they came to the conclusion it was the USS Emmons. On February 21st, 2001, Rich, Ruth, and a team of divers reached the wreck and found what they confirmed was, in fact, the Emmons. And the next day, John Chandler visited the Emmons with a group of divers, all of whom were active, retired, or former U.S. Marines. John and Rich immediately arranged a memorial service honoring the lost shipmates to be held 2 months later on April 6th, 56 years following that attack. From the time of the ship's discovery, John routinely provided the shipmates photos and videos of the ship in her final resting place. John attended the 2002 reunion in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was there that he presented the idea of a memorial plaque honoring the shipmates. Those shipmates raised the money for the plaque, and a year later it became reality. John authored a chapter in the second edition of the Emmons saga, addressing that rediscovery. He's a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel, and he and his wife Teresa operate Chandler Studios in Richlands, North Carolina. So 18 years following that reunion in Jacksonville, he's back with us. And John enthusiastically agreed to share a few words, again, followed by any questions you may have. John, I hope you're out there, and welcome.
Tom, I'm sitting here and I'm enthralled by the interest that that Zoom allows us to have in Emmons. And I've been looking around at the group through the gallery, and the youth that's here is, because I was a lot younger when we photographed the rediscovery of Emmons. You know, I used film. Holy smokes, you know? I mean, I used film, and there wasn't thought of digital when I was taking these pictures. We hadn't even considered digital yet. It's really encouraging to see youth, to see younger faces out there tonight. And again, the Emmons family that I have certainly felt a part of just for the longest time. Great group of people, and you all do just the right things. I have a few photographs, 10, to show you tonight, okay?
Okay.
And I'm going to try to share the screen because sometimes I get lucky with, you should be able to see a screen right now of the, what you're looking at is the top deck of the Emmons the day after she was discovered. This is essentially the first picture of Emmons I took. Now, Tom, can you see that? Okay, am I sharing it all right?
Yes, it's very
good. Okay, great. It'll be interesting to see as we go on, and Kurt and Joe, it would be, or Mike, I'm sorry, it'll be neat for me to see what this, you know, what the wreck has looked like. Now, she shifted because of typhoons. She's rolled one way, she's rolled another. I think she's back on starboard side. We're looking aft, and I'll move to this next. Theoretically, I'm going to move to this next picture. We'll see if I can do it. Hey, there we go. The picture of, I believe this is going to be the port side screw. I believe the starboard side screw was knocked off by kamikaze and bent down. And though I don't have a picture of it, I validate that one of the two were nailed. I put the diver in there just to give you all an idea of how big that screw is and the condition of it at that time. Again, a diver in the picture. I'm forward on the ship now. I swum all the way forward from, of course, this is a second dive. And I've swum all the way forward. This is on one of her 5-inch 38s. And this is the forward 5-inch 38. I'm sure as Mike and Kurt have, I didn't include any pictures on this presentation because I didn't want to overdo it. Just on the left side, port side, I've got real nice pictures of where some of the rounds from Ellison went through and to sink her. But they're not seen in this picture. That's the forward gun to her. Now this is aft behind the bridge, and John Dawkins, That's one of the 40 millimeter anti-aircraft guns. So again, I put the diver in there so you get an idea how big the that piece of equipment really is. It's pretty decent size. It's awe-inspiring. Again, back forward on a 5-inch 38 guns at that time. This gun was pointed towards the surface, as you can see. The other gun was level with a surface to the ocean. Another 5-inch 38. Now you can see here what I'm talking about with the way that the guns were trained. And in pretty good shape too. I mean, you know, America makes good steel. I will say that in 2021, it was still in pretty good shape. I mean, our steel's pretty good. Another picture of the guns. And I want to circle through here real quick. I want to take you to that. This is when we knew she was Emmons, because of these planes that they use for minesweeping. This is when we were confident that we were on Emmons. And that's when we sent these pictures to your people in the Emmons Association to give us the thumbs up that we were on what we thought was Emmons. We hadn't found any identification plaques, anything at all. But this is the picture. This is from my first dive the day after the discovery. And I'll give you a quick hint how we discovered this. Super highly scientific, incredibly. We used nothing but, we used no state-of-the-art. We used rope, we used weights, and we were drugged behind a boat at about 90 feet of water, going through the, well, actually about 60 feet of water, going through the water in patterns, just the way we were taught as Marines to look for stuff, and as divers also to set up a search pattern underwater. So we didn't use high-tech, you know, side-looking radar or infrared anything, or we just, we lucked on it, and we hit it. And we didn't get a lot of gouge from the Coast Guard or from anybody. We were talking to one of the Coast Guard fellows. Ruth could speak good enough Japanese to get through it, but it was the newspaper reports and common sense, and going back to the United States, asking the Navy to give us information on sinkings and locations and whatnot. So that's that. And Tom, I'll come out of screen share unless anybody's got any questions specifically to any of those pictures. Again, Tom, I limited this to 10 pictures because I know what it's like to be on that side, especially with phones now. Everybody wants to show you 100 pictures of their grandkids. So if you like, I'll stop sharing and we can move on with the program.
John,
Any questions at all, I'd be more than happy to answer.
John, I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were. I assume you knew the history of the Emmons and
Yes.
what occurred with her. What were your thoughts the first time you dove on her and you saw her down there? What went through your head?
Well, Emmons, for me, Emmons wasn't my first wreck ever. I had been fortunate enough to dive in Truck Lagoon. I'm sure nobody's familiar with that, but we annihilated the Japanese fleet in Truck Lagoon, and the Americans did in World War II. And I dove on about, I don't know, 25, 30 wrecks. So when I first saw her, I was pretty sure she was an American warship. And I was really taken back, and I'll give you a quick story. I was humbled. There was a spookiness, if you will. You know, we didn't have a rope to go down. I mean, we were diving down, you know, and the currents are pretty tough, as I'm sure Mike would attest to, and the other divers. So we were really working to get to this thing. I was touched by it. One of the guys that dove with us on that day was a Japanese instructor. And we came up between dives, and he was really, really spooked, moved. I mean, he was on the back of the boat praying for the souls that were on that ship. and he was really moved by it. His religion had really moved him, and of course, that really inspired a lot of people, you know, especially me. So I hope that answered your question. It was a spooky day, Tom. Spooky.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to finally meet you, John. Obviously, I wasn't in Jacksonville back in 2000. Was it 2002? I think.
It was. Yeah, I had just come back from a long well, not long, but a 7-year stint on Okinawa, and met your dad. Got to meet everybody.
And I do recall my dad and the excitement over the discovery and the pictures you guys were sending him and the video. And you know, words can't express what it meant to these guys nearly 20 years ago. And I'm sure you can imagine, not just your discovery of the Emmons and the photos and the videos, but the love and the care and the honor and the respect that you and Rich and the others always exhibited right from day one. We could hear that from my dad.
You know, Tom, that was the start, but I am so impressed with what Kurt and Mike and the divers are doing on Okinawa this minute, today.
Yep.
I just heard that they've named the USS Emmons training facility at Camp Shields. Well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that had happened. And I have a daughter serving on Okinawa right now, too.
Yeah.
I'll talk to her about that.
Mm-hmm.
But what Mike and Kurt and the dive community that are associated with Emmons, my hat's off and my gratitude to each of you, to all of you. Thank you very much. You took what we started and you guys have really made it elegant. Thank you all very much.
Well, I think your discovery is a major factor as to why we're here today. So thank you again. And John, thank you for being here with us.
Please contact me anytime. Anybody needs pictures, anybody needs anything for any work that they're doing, academic, otherwise, just give me a shout.
No, I appreciate that, John. Thank you.
Hey, hey, John, Kurt here. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Kurt. Yes, loud and clear.
I would like to ask if you can send me a copy of those photos the next time I'm out on the Emmons, which will be today, later today, and again tomorrow. I would like to try and catch, and maybe Mike Boring can do this too, try to catch those same angles for those areas so we can get a little before and after.
Yeah, I sure will, Kurt. That's easy to do. And thank you very much for rubbing it in that you're diving Emmons tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah, it's our honor to be able to do it.
Yeah, this is Mike. We will take those pictures. Those are fascinating. I would love to see more of what you have as well.
Again, I've shown you 10. I've probably got, you know, what, 1,000. So, but they're all on film. So I got to scan them as you need them, and I've got plenty scanned for you. Great talking to you guys. Kurt, Mike, thanks for doing everything you're doing and continuing this, keeping the Emmons alive. It's great.
It's our honor.
Thank you for getting it started.
Hey, it's great getting you guys together. It's like the start and the carrying on. Speaking of Kurt, now we got him up on our screen there a little screen time. Another special relationship was forged back in 2004 when Sergeant Kurt Reese, then on, I believe, his 3rd tour at Okinawa with the U.S. Marine Corps, contacted us, my father and so forth, through the website, inquiring about documenting the Emmons wreck and documenting her story. He explained that he was on the island when the ship was first discovered and had since made several dives. Before long, he, along with now retired Marine Corps Master Gunnery Sergeant Chuck DeCesare, they became our custodial benefactors there in Okinawa, keeping watch over the ship, organizing their April memorial service at the site for the lost shipmates. I think, Kurt, you'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's every year since 2006 you've been doing that. Does that sound right?
Tom, there were smaller services, I believe started in 2006.
Up on the site?
We started doing the big ones in 2009.
Okay. I mean, they continued relaying photos and just amazing video back to these guys. They're sharing the Emmons history and the stories of selfless sacrifice with their local diving community. And of course, the theft of the builder's plaque. They assisted NCIS in recovery of the stolen builder's plaque back in 2011. And of course, I could go on, but it's getting late. Did I mention they raised over $13,000 for our scholarship fund? After leaving the Marine Corps, Kurt, his work included putting those diving skills to work as a civilian contractor, instructing Marines in water survival skills, while he continued as the prime mover in preserving and honoring the Emmons wreck site. Kurt, his wife Sheree, and 3 children, they live in Okinawa. And Kurt is here in the cyber flesh today. We've heard from him, we've seen him on film, but we actually have him in person in a COVID kind of way. While we'll be sharing video of his April memorial dive shortly, he first wanted to extend his greetings to all of us. So Kurt, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks, Tom. When I was first over here and learned how to dive, I figured there had to be something around from World War II. But all my research was telling me there really wasn't anything left, or that anything was out there was too deep to dive. So when we heard about the rediscovery of the Emmons, we were thrilled to be able to get out there. My first dive there was April of 2002. I think it was probably after John and those guys did the memorial. So I've seen a lot of changes in the ship between 2002 and now. We've been diving it for 18 years. I had gotten out of diving for a while, raising my kids and that kind of thing. And then the History Channel actually got me back into it when they contacted us in 2007, asking for information on the Emmons. And then we were able to get out there with Don Wildman and shoot footage for the Cities of the Underworld, Okinawa Tunnels of Hell episode. And I've been holding steady ever since. I think it's safe to say if I'm not teaching students to dive, all I'm doing is diving the Emmons. So probably easily 90% or more of the dives I do are diving on the Emmons. And I see something new every time I'm down there, every time. And it's just humbling to be able to go down there and see what the ship went through and what the sailors went through. It's just amazing.
Tell us about the shape of the ship now. We saw pictures early on from John, but things aren't looking so good down there, I don't think. Is that right?
That's correct. As the years go by, obviously there was a lot of battle damage and fire damage on the ship. I'll say it was somewhat relatively intact when we first started diving it. The hole in the port bow was probably only about this big, maybe a little bit bigger, but now you could fit probably 10 divers side by side through that hole. And on certain days when the current is running, it's just constant pressure on the ship, as evidenced by the deck on the bow, almost completely ripped out. So, and then after every typhoon, of course, you saw the recent photos I sent out with the fresh rust spots. So after the typhoons and the conditions are rough, it's just hitting those weak areas and breaking them down even further. So the hole on the port side all along the ship continues to open up, opening access, not yet, but soon, to some of the interior areas. And as those areas open up, artifacts are starting to spill out. Glass bottles, ammunition in some cases. You can still see powder cans for the 5-inch guns below decks, with the stenciling still visible on them. So just something new every time. And yeah, as the years go by, 75 years plus, the Emmons has been down there. She's starting to show her age.
I'll ask you the same thing I asked John. Your first dive on the Emmons, what were your thoughts? What went through your head?
I'll be honest with you, I was narked out, nitrogen narcosis. When you dive deep, you tend to experience that. So that's kind of why I started shooting video, because after a dive, I wouldn't remember half of what I saw down there. Narcosis affects people in different ways. For me, my thought process just kind of slowed down. I'm always checking my dive computer and my gas supply. So when I shoot video and get back home, I can look at the video and say, oh, well, I didn't see that, and I didn't see that, and I didn't see that. So, but it was overwhelming, the first dive. You can't see everything on your first dive on the Emmons. And Chuck always includes that in his briefs when we're taking people out there. Just pick one area, focus on that, learn what you can, and on your next dive, pick another spot to focus on, because there's just so much to see.
Well, thanks, Kurt. We appreciate you being here with us. You know, the Emmons family will always have you in their gratitude for the dedication, the care, and the concern you extend for the ship and all her lost shipmates. You know, not only you, but Chuck and all those in your diving community there that have participated in watching over the ship, honoring the fallen shipmates over the years. It's just so much, you know, words can't express. So it's great to have you here with us today. I know, I think Chuck's there with you too. So
actually, he's out over the Emmons right now.
Okay.
He's got 2 charters going out there today. I'll be on the next one.
Well, we hope to have this recorded and available on YouTube, so he can watch later. So
Absolutely. I'm happy to see that 5-inch gun cage light on the shelf behind you there.
You see that?
That came out of 5-inch gun number 3 when it started to collapse.
Right here.
Yep.
Everybody, let's see what he's talking about.
Those lights were hanging out of the turret by electrical cables. I got it on video. I notified Tom immediately, and I said, if I don't grab these now and take them, someone else is going to get them. So we went out there the next day, cut the cables, brought them up, and that's what you see.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece of Emmons history. Thanks again, Kurt.
You're welcome, Tom.
Bear with me, everyone. So it was another successful year for our scholarship program, with the applicants proudly honoring the Emmons and her crew. The Lieutenant John J. Griffin USS Memorial Scholarship Program is now in its 11th year. To date, we have awarded 19 scholarships to Emmons family members. What started with a $1,000 annual award has grown to over $2,500 in awards granted each year, 2 $2,500 awards granted each year. The scholarship application is open to direct descendants of Emmons shipmates, and because many of those lost at Okinawa have no descendants, it's open to direct descendants of the siblings of those shipmates lost at Okinawa. So if you or someone in your family meets one of these criteria, we strongly urge you to apply. The 2021 scholarship application for next year will be available on our website by January 1st. It'll have a May 31st filing date, deadline date rather. And we invite you to visit our website to learn more at ussemmons.org. So let's meet our 2020 scholarship recipients. So each year the applicants are required to address an essay prompt relating to our country's proud military service, often focused on the Emmons or simply tying it back to the Emmons legacy. In a minute, you're going to get to hear the essays of this year's 2 award recipients. So we'd like to share with you first the essay prompt. With our recent reunion in Gettysburg, this year's essay prompt centered around Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. So that, combined with this year being the 75th anniversary of the end of the Battle of Okinawa, the last major battle of World War II, the applicants were asked to address the historical significance of the Battle of Okinawa, what role the Emmons played in its outcome. They are asked to counter the argument made by some that because the war came to an end shortly after the Okinawa campaign through the use of the atomic bomb, that the sacrifice of the Emmons was in vain. They're asked to counter that argument. And finally, they were asked what actions they can take to ensure that the sacrifices made by our veterans, in the words of Lincoln, will not have been in vain and do not elapse with the passage of time. And to top it off, they were asked to do that in 500 to 750 words only. So I'm now going to hand it over to Eleanor Yates, the daughter of shipmate Charles Mokunas. Eleanor is going to introduce this year's award recipients, and they'll share their essays with you. Eleanor, if you'll unmute yourself out there and tell us about our award recipients.
I just want to make sure you can hear me.
We can hear you, Eleanor.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Our first recipient of the 2020 Lieutenant John J. Griffin USS Emmons Memorial Scholarship Award of $2,500 is Jacob Thaddeus DeGregory. Jake is the great-grandson of crew member Thaddeus Denerowitz, machinist mate 2nd class. Thaddeus was a survivor of the Okinawa attack and boarded the Emmons in September 1942. Jake's parents are Holly and Captain Chris DeGregory, who is the grandson of Thaddeus. And some of you might remember that Jake and his father attended our reunion at Gettysburg last year. Jake is in his first year of college at Penn State University, where he is studying business and marketing. Jake recently graduated from Great Bridge High School in Chesapeake, Virginia. His teacher of the Honors Virginia and United States Government class wrote that Jake has a true desire to learn. Whether in class or online due to COVID this year, Jake's work ethic in class is outstanding. Jake continued to turn in excellent work. He explained that Jake was also active in the Great Bridge High School swim and dive team and Student Council Association. Jake has been a key part in many school spirit days, assemblies, and activities. And he has, quote, honed his time management skills and has balanced his studies and extracurricular activities, end quote. Jake also attends St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Norfolk, Virginia. According to the Reverend, Jake serves as an acolyte, lay reader, and usher. He recently gave a powerful sermon, quote unquote, for the Youth Sunday, talking about his faith. Jake is also an Eagle Scout. I love Eagle Scouts. Eagle Scout, and the Reverend describes him as a person of character, determination, and strength. He has a good sense of humor, is extremely polite, is willing to help where needed, and always has a smile for others. So at this time, Jake, somewhere out there, I will ask you to unmute yourself, and we would love to hear your essay, if you would please read it to us. Congratulations, Jake.
First off, thank you. And thank you to the committee and everyone who selected me to win the Lieutenant John J. Griffin / USS Emmons scholarship. So this is my essay. The Battle of Okinawa was the last major battle of World War II in the Pacific Theater. Allied forces in the European theater were only weeks away from victory, with Germany committing unconditional surrender. However, war in the Pacific Theater was still raging. The USS Emmons was a part of a group of ships designated to attack Okinawa. Geographically, Okinawa Island was a crucial operating point for mainland Japan. If the Allied forces could take the island, they would be able to launch air raids and have an advantage over mainland Japan. The USS Emmons was sent out prior to the scheduled attack as a part of a mine-sweeping squad. Their mission was to clear the waters of explosive hazards, enabling the other ships to strike Okinawa without much interference. After little Japanese contact over several days, the USS Emmons was put on early alert/radar duty. However, their critical minesweeping role, putting both ships and crew in harm's way, ensured ultimate success for the ensuing battle. The Battle of Okinawa itself was a critical victory for the Allied forces because it established a position of power over Japan. Okinawa provided the Allies a strategic foothold close to mainland Japan, giving the Allies immediate access to troops and artillery directly in Japanese territory. It is sometimes argued that this battle was pointless because the atomic bomb was dropped very soon after ending the war in the Pacific. I would disagree in that every battle has a purpose, win or lose. Each becomes a stepping stone to the next strategic action. Japan was prepared to fight to the very end, sacrificing thousands along the way. After seeing the loss of American lives in this battle, Truman realized that dropping the bomb would provide an immediate solution, ending further American lives lost, and would guarantee victory. Those lives previously lost would not be in vain. Japan's last man standing strategy was shut down, and Japan learned the Allies would go to great measures to avoid further casualties. Had this battle not happened, Truman may have never concluded the need to drop the atomic bomb on Japan. Most Americans, and myself personally, can take many actions that make sure the sacrifices of our military men and women are not in vain. Now more than ever, patriotism is the biggest action that anyone can take because it means supporting the country that our brothers and sisters died for and continue to die for every day. During these trying times, showing support towards the ideologies of this country and what it was founded on is the most important thing that can be done because that is what the sailors of the USS Emmons and the soldiers of World War II fought for, our right to freedom.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'll move on to our other recipient of the Memorial Scholarship Award of $2,500 is Luca Marin Devers. Luca is the great-granddaughter of crew member John H. Devers, who served on the USS Emmons as radar man first class from January 1942 until the Emmons was converted to a minesweeper in late 1944. Luca's mother, Lena Devers, is the granddaughter of John, and Luca's grandfather, Mike Devers, is John's son. And once again, some of you might remember from last year, Luca and her grandfather flew in from California last year to attend our reunion. We got to see her on the banquet night at Gettysburg so she could formally accept her scholarship award. Luca is in her second year of college at California State University, Long Beach, where she continues to study to become a nurse practitioner. Luca has been described by her English professor as being a talented, dedicated, and enthusiastic scholar. Her work was consistently, quote unquote, A quality, showing her strong skills in logic and analysis. She excelled in all class projects, even during the COVID crisis when having to work online off campus. Luca adapted well and submitted quality work. Luca's longtime neighbor and friend, who is also a medical doctor with 40 years of emergency medical experience, describes Luca as a fine young lady who engages others in mature conversations. Her quote-unquote personality and interpersonal skills will become her greatest assets. Luca, end quote, Luca approaches life and people, quote unquote, with no judgment, end quote. So Luca, I know you're out there, and at this time, I'll ask you to unmute yourself so we could hear you read your essay to us. Congratulations, Luca.
Thank you so much. I also want to say thank you to everyone. It's an honor to have received the scholarship for the second year in a row, and it was amazing being able to fly out, having the ability to fly out last year, and a lot of familiar faces.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead with my essay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. The Battle of Okinawa is truly one that will never be forgotten. With 1,600 ships and 350,000 naval personnel, it was the largest assault force of World War II in the Pacific Theater. Essentially, Okinawa was the last barrier standing in the way of the Allied forces' defeat of Japan. It was the only landmass close enough for fighter aircraft to support bombers and for naval and land forces to gather strength for the final invasion of the Japanese homeland. In the initial steps of Operation Iceberg, minesweeps and tactical strikes were carried out to open up the landing for the U.S. Army and Marines. As part of the Task Group 52.3, the USS Emmons, a high-speed destroyer minesweeper, had a critical role conducting sweeping operations to clear the approaches for support and joint expeditionary forces. Since the Emmons commissioning on December 5, 1941, she followed her orders to the fullest of her capabilities through to the day of her sinking. While on picket duty with her sister ship, the USS Rodman, on April 6, 1945, they came under heavy kamikaze attacks. One of the first planes to attack struck the Rodman. As a selfless act, the USS Emmons took up positioning, circling the stricken ship to provide anti-aircraft cover. The Emmons was struck by 5 suicide planes, crippled and ablaze, with more than half of her officers and crew killed or wounded. Lieutenant John J. Griffin took command of the Emmons and worked to save the ship, but the damage was overwhelming, resulting in the order to abandon ship. On the global level, the sacrifice of the Emmons was not in vain because they showed that they were completely committed to the defeat of Japan. On the personal level, you can ask the crew of the Rodman how they felt about the Emmons' action. Some may question why military command did not wait for the atomic bomb to end the war. Regrettably, United States research did not start until 1941 and was then taken up by the military with the Manhattan Project in 1942. It did not become a reality until the first successful test on July 16, 1945 in Alamogordo, New Mexico. As a highly classified project, few military planners knew of it, and those that did could not fathom its full potential and thought of it as only one element of the Allied approach to the unconditional surrender of Japan under Operation Downfall. The Emmons legacy encompasses the duration of World War II and continues to stand tall among many World War II stories of duty and heroism, but as a 4th-generation ancestor of an Emmons shipmate, it is a story that has become personal. As a college student who plans to enter nursing school, I have the pleasure to volunteer my time at the VA hospital, and through that work, I am afforded the opportunity to share the experience of the USS Emmons with subsequent generations of United States heroes. It is through constant interaction with our living history that we can ensure that the valor of our brave forefathers never lapses. I will take the stories about my great-grandfather, John H. Devers, as well as the Emmons Association members and shipmates, and make sure their stories are told. I pledge to the crew members I met last year, Tony Esposito, Armin Jolly, George Flory, and Grover McMichael, the other Emmons survivors, their families, and all USS Emmons Association members that I will do my best to ensure that her memory will not elapse with the passage of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Tom. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Eleanor.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jake and Luca. It's wonderful to see you guys, the two of you again.
Yeah.
The Legacy Committee could not be more pleased and excited about the applications and the essays that we receive every year. But again, this year, it's just wonderful to see the pride you guys have in your great-grandfather's service. And I know how proud they would be of both of you. We wish you both the best as you continue your studies in this crazy COVID world. I'm glad to see you. Looks like you're both at school now. So just appreciate you both being here and taking time from your studies to be here. So thank you. And we hope to see you next year. So we'll finish up our reunion here, our memorial service every year. Well, every reunion since that first one back in 1953, the men set aside time to honor the memory of their shipmates lost at Okinawa. That tradition continues each year as are part of our Reunions Friday outing. It affords us the opportunity to hold a memorial service honoring and remembering their sacrifice. We were determined not to let the pandemic keep us from doing that this year. That was pretty much the driving force of why we're here tonight, along with the need to just stay connected. So that being said, for our memorials, we'll get our memorial service underway. So let's just bow our heads in prayer. Dear Lord, we ask for your presence as we gather today as members of the Emmons family to remember and honor the shipmates of the USS Emmons who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our country, April 6, 1945, and those who have departed this earth since, and to honor the Emmons family members whose life's journey ended this past year. We also pray today, Lord, for the families and friends of those shipmates who gave their lives. May they be constantly reassured that the sacrifice of their loved ones so many years ago contributed to this great nation. May they be proud of those they have lost. Amen. "13 Emmons officers and crewmen received individual recognition for outstanding performance of duty at Okinawa on April 6, 1945, with awards of 1 Navy Cross, 4 Silver Stars, and 8 Bronze Stars. All personnel serving on the Emmons at the time of her sinking received a Navy Unit Commendation Ribbon from the Secretary of Navy. The Navy Unit Commendation was the Navy's way of recognizing bravery and devotion of duty of an entire crew. It was impossible to recognize each one individually, so their performance as a group was commended. As has been customary at each reunion, we'd like to share that commendation with you. So right now I'm going to ask Mike Esposito, son of the shipmate Tony Esposito, to go ahead and unmute himself and share the reading of the USS Emmons Navy Unit Commendation with us. Mike, are you out there?
Yes, can you hear me, Tom?
We hear you. Thank you.
President of the United States takes pleasure in commending the United States ship Emmons for service as follows. For outstanding heroism in action while attached to Mine Squadron 20, operating under Commander Mine Force Pacific Fleet from March 21 to 31, and thereafter under the operational control of Commander Transport Screen from April 1 through 6, 1945. During operations for the seizure of enemy Japanese-held Okinawa, Ryukyu Islands, although lightly armed and highly vulnerable while operating in dangerous mined waters, the USS Emmons rendered heroic service in mine sweeping, fire support, radar picket, anti-suicide boat, anti-submarine, and anti-aircraft screen missions. A natural and frequent target for heavy Japanese aerial attack, she was constantly vigilant and ready for battle, fighting her guns valiantly to destroy a group of Japanese suicide planes striking in force on April 6th, and downing 6 of the attackers before 5 others crashed her in rapid succession, killing or wounding many personnel and inflicting damage which necessitated her sinking. By her own aggressiveness and the courage and skill of her officers and men, the USS Emmons achieved a record of gallantry in combat, reflecting the highest credit upon herself and the United States Naval Service. Signed, John L. Sullivan, Secretary of the Navy.
Thank you, Mike. I'd like to share a few words myself about the sacrifice aboard the Emmons that day. Actually, they're words of my father's Quartermaster 3rd Class Ed Hoffman. Excuse me. For years, my father spoke very little about his time aboard the Emmons, as I've often heard from many of the other children of the crew members. They were a proud, yet very humble group of guys who didn't dwell on their war experiences. Over the years, we received bits and pieces of what occurred that day, but a few years before my father passed away, he called us kids together. While not wanting to glorify the past with a war story, and those were his words, he felt we needed to hear the whole story of his experience April 6, 1945. Excuse me. It's something that gave me a whole new perspective on the sacrifice made by so many on the Emmons that day. And it's something I want to share with you today. So he proceeded to explain in detail the layout of the pilot house on the navigation deck where my dad was during the attack, that he was on the engine order telegraph as Captain Foss's talker. He's relaying orders to the engine room. He told of those two kamikazes that struck on either side of the bridge just below them, engulfing the area in flames and extreme heat. He explained how Captain Foss on the port wing of the bridge at the time was blown into the water, and how my dad suddenly found himself on his hands and knees, trying to find a way out, and how he managed to escape and get to the water where he could be rescued. But his story quickly stopped being about him, and it became clear to us that while he was grateful for his survival, his thoughts were always with those shipmates of his that sacrificed. He went on about his shipmates who, in his words, were never afforded the opportunity to return home and have a family and lead a life. Speaking almost like it was yesterday, my dad told of his 5 shipmates that were there with him in the pilot house. Henry Thompson from Tennessee, chief quartermaster, he was on the wheel alongside of him. Henry died later that evening from his wounds. Tommy Orton, the storekeeper from Ohio, he was the talker to the main battery of guns. Tommy was listed as missing. His status was later updated to killed in action. Argo Terreri from Rhode Island, talker to Bill Roberts in secondary con. Argo was listed as missing and later updated to killed in action. Al Riskus from Pittsburgh at the quartermaster's desk, keeping the log. Al was listed as missing, later updated to killed in action. And Joseph Franco from Blakely, Pennsylvania, a talker to repair parties. Now, Joe got out, suffered burns similar to what my father encountered. So 4 of his 5 shipmates there in the pilot house with him never made it back home. Henry Thompson, Tommy Orton, Argo Terreri, and Al Riskus. Dad then proceeded to tell us of a letter he received years later. It was addressed to the USS Emmons Association from the grandson of a woman by the name of Margaret Cohen. The grandson started out how his grandmother had always shared that her first love was lost on a ship during the war, but that he never pursued it with her. The letter went on to say that day that she shared his name, Albert Riskus. She told her grandson he served on a small ship called the USS Emmons. So the grandson did some fact checking and found a ship called the USS Emmons was lost during World War II. He found our website and wrote asking if anyone had information or knew about a sailor by the name of Albert Riskus. The letter went on to say, quote, "I could see the look in my grandmother's eyes as she told me the story, and I know in her twilight years, learning anything about this man would mean the world to her," unquote. Of course, my dad wrote back telling of their time on the ship together and Al's final day there in the pilot house, but Dad looked at us and said, "Al Riskus's family is one that never existed. The same as many of his other 59 shipmates that died that day." It was clear Dad sat us down, not just to remind us how fortunate we, the Hoffmans as a family were, but perhaps more importantly, to help us better understand and to never take for granted the sacrifice of his 60 shipmates and their loved ones left behind. We'll never fully comprehend what those guys went through what they experienced that day on the Emmons. And there's no way we as free Americans can ever repay the debt for the services given so freely. But we can remember the sacrifices made and those who made them. So at this time, let's just take some time and reflect upon all those who made that ultimate sacrifice aboard the Emmons, April 6, 1945. We also want to take this opportunity to honor the memory of the shipmates lost this past year, as well as other Emmons family members who passed away. Shipmates James G. Queen, Clarence Chantlin, and Emmons family members, Rita Bloomer, widow of shipmate Arthur Bloomer, Eunice Kaminsky, sister of shipmate Kenneth Jakubowski, killed in action, Okinawa. Josephine Morrow, sister of shipmate O'Neill Infanto, killed in action, Okinawa. Shirley Stancheva, beloved friend of the USS Emmons Association, and Christine Yarbrough, granddaughter of shipmate Tony Esposito. Let's honor their memory with a moment of silence and reflection. Thank you. Before we close the memorial service with Kurt's memorial dive video, I'd like to recognize the lost shipmates who were grateful to have family members representing them here today. Those shipmates with family members representing them are O'Neill Infanto, and there's just too many to list all the names. The shipmates are O'Neill Infanto, Shuford Robinette, John Malloway, Ross Elliott Jr., David Horowitz, Raymond Wilder, Stanley Fisher, Thomas Horton Jr., Temple Linz, and Donald Jecky. As you know, April of each year, our Okinawa diver friends, led by Kurt Reese and Chuck DeCesare, they conduct a memorial dive at the site of the Emmons final resting site, honoring the memory and sacrifice of the men who gave their lives aboard the Emmons. And each year, Kurt provides us with a video documenting the occasion. As a bonus, Kurt's video this year includes footage of items representing everyday life aboard the Emmons for the shipmates, as well as views around the ship and placement of the memorial plaque we spoke about earlier, followed by the memorial. So again, I do apologize for the choppy video shared through Zoom, but immediately following the reunion, what I'm going to do is I'll send a link to this to everyone via email. If you wish, you can download it to your computers or laptop, your devices, and view it in its finest quality.
Eckers, Eugene C.
Anders, Jack L.
Anderson, Edwin T.
Ashmore, James C.
Bilger, Frederick A.
Bloom, Paul F.
Bonage, Joseph F.
Borelli, John V.
Bauer, Harry T. Jr.
Caracciolo, Joseph P.
Carlton, David A.
Chadsey, William L.
Zielinski, Henry S.
Collin, Charles R.
Day, Robert L.
Donaldson, John L.
Elliott, Ross T. Jr.
Fecto, Charles Jr.
Fisher, Stanley L.
Gorchella, Joseph A.
Herbert, Philip B.
Heron, George H. Jr.
Horowitz, David.
Horvatin, Rudolph J.
Howe, Hudson C.
Infanto, O'Neill L.
Jacobowski, Kenneth J.
Jones, John V.
Kennedy, Chester H.
Cole, Cleo R.
La Jeunesse, Arsène L.
Lenz, Temple J. Jr.
Malloway, John S.
McCarthy, John P.
McCollister, Donald A.
McConnell, Thomas.
McConnell, William J.
Mesco, Emmett F.
Newman, Ralph W. Jr.
Nichols, Thomas H.
Nix, William.
Orton, Thomas D. Jr.
Otto, Warren P.
Parsler, George.
Peck, Charles.
Richards, Francis E.
Riskus, Albert E.
Robinette, Shuford J.
Sarola, George E.
Charbonneau, Herbert W.
Shea, Robert A.
Stedman, Alan W.
Sweeney, Kenneth F.
Terboss, Francis G.
Terreri, Argo A.
Feast, George L. Jr.
Thompson, Henry O.
Tripodi, Vincent F.
Wilder, Raymond L.
Yeck, Donald L.
Kurt, thank you. Thank you and all who were involved in placing that new plaque and for conducting that service. And Kurt and Mike and Lynn Boring for adding the names during the tolling of the bell. As I said before, we can never repay them, but we can remember and honor them. So thank you, everybody.
Hey, Tom,
Yes, Kurt.
give me about 20 seconds. I'm going to grab something here and I'll be right back.
Okay,
I got something I got to show you.
I'll tell a few jokes.
All right.
As I said, we are recording this. Hopefully we'll be able to put it on YouTube with a link on our website. Unfortunately, that Hymn to the Fallen music will probably get knocked out by YouTube because of licensing, but I'm going to send, like I said, I'll send a link to all of you through, it's called WeTransfer. You'll get it in your email. It's up to you if you want to download it. That's how Kurt and I exchange videos all the time. You need to see it in its fullest quality. What's up, Kurt?
All right. This was the bell that was used for the tolling. Armand Jolly initiated this to send this bell here. And the plaque on it says, "The Emmons Association gratefully thanks Kurt Reese and the divers of Okinawa, guardians of USS Emmons, DD 457, DMS 22, and the 60 lost souls, and the 60 souls lost on 6 April 1945. Now, we had originally done this on Chuck's boat over the Emmons with the tolling of the bell, but it turned out there was too much background noise with the wind and whatnot. So I went with an alternate recording of the bell toll, but I think I think the point comes across the same way. So I thank Armand for this bell, and I will cherish this always.
Great. Thank you, Kurt.
All right.
Dennis, Donna, I trust you'll pass that along to Armand too. So before we close out the reunion with our traditional introduction of the Emmons shipmates here with us today, the Legacy Committee wishes to thank all of you sincerely for taking the time to be here, for attending, for helping us stay connected during these crazy times. We hope and pray that we'll be back together in person next fall, but if not, hey, we're experts at this now. We can do this again. Special thanks, John Dawkins. It's been wonderful to meet you and get to know you, and John Chandler to finally meet you, and of course Kurt. Thanks to the three of you for making time to be here and to speak with us. And our scholarship recipients, I don't want to forget Jake and Luca. Thanks for being here. Now get back to work on your studies.
Hey, Tom, it's Mike. If I can just interrupt before we move on.
Yeah, Mike.
These are strange times we're living in, and I've been attending these reunions for almost 20 years, since 2002 in Jacksonville, as a matter of fact. This was, I'm sure, more than challenging for Tom to put this together, and I just like to give Tom a big shout out for the countless hours of work that he put into making this this virtual reunion happen today. So, Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. That was Mike Esposito, Tony's son. I don't want any thanks. It's all about honoring these guys. Having the opportunity to work with my dad all those years just makes this all worthwhile. So, but thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here. Okay. So again, we invite all of you to join us next year. We'll be at Annapolis, Maryland. We'll be touring the Naval Academy. We hope to see a lot of you there that we haven't met before, as well as all the regulars.
Tom, this is George Foss. Could I have a word?
Hi, George. Yes, George. This is George Foss, is Captain Foss's son.
I'm the eldest of three. Lyman is aboard tonight. My middle brother, Paul, is not with us. But Dad would be so proud. He's been 25 years gone now. He would be so proud of you and the association and this group. I'm just overwhelmed. And I want to just tell you that from the Foss family. It's just unbelievable.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you so much. And, you know, I don't do this by myself. The Legacy Committee was there behind me, but Thank you, George. I appreciate it.
But your dad told you that my father was blown into the water,
Yes,
and that's what happened.
yes.
He wasn't there at the very end.
No,
He was in 6 inches of burning oil
that's right. He led
on the
them.
surface of the sea.
He led the ship over to the defense of the Rodman.
That's correct.
Did everything he could against overwhelming odds.
Yeah.
But that first, one of those two that hit below there just blew him right into the water. Fortunately, he was rescued. And,
Yes, later. Tom, I have quite a bit of his memorabilia here in the way of framed pictures where the ship crossed the into the Arctic Ocean and over the equator and things of that kind. I believe really the association ought to have those things. Could I communicate with you about what I'm holding of Dad's?
absolutely. We're establishing quite an archive. And yeah, I have your email, George. I'll reach out to you after this all quiets down. And
Perfect.
yeah, we appreciate that.
Thank you, and God bless all of you.
Thank you, George.
Hey, Tom,
Yes.
this is Lyman Foss.
Hi, Hyman.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Been pleased to meet you, and I'll echo my my big brother's words. This is a monumental effort, very meaningful, personally, and obviously our dad would be, immensely proud of this. So thank you for putting everything together. And I'd just like to say, on a very personal note, I was reading the USS Emmons history that was put together by Andrew Wild.
Yes.
And in it, he talks about a Charles Cordero, who was a ship member or a crew member of the Emmons, and he actually rescued our father. He got in the water and he found Dad, and he pulled him onto a raft, and which was later received by the USS Dorsey and then transferred to the USS Crescent City. And his daughter, Barbara Kaufman, was on tonight. And I communicated to her that it was her father who saved my father. And had that not come to be, I would never have been born and enjoy the lifetime that I have. So this is meaningful on a tremendously deep and personal level. So in all events, thank you for everything that you've done and for all the members of the USS Emmons crew.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. And it's great to meet you.
And you.
And Barbara, I believe Barbara's here with us tonight. I haven't had a chance to scroll through and look, but it's great to bring the two of you together, or the three of you with your brother.
Indeed.
Tom, one quick word.
Yeah, what's up, George?
This is George Foss. I was fortunate enough to be aboard the Emmons when I was 4 years old. She was in Boston being refitted as a destroyer minesweeper. This would be November of 1944. And I was 4 years old, and they allowed me to steer. Now she was at the dock, so it didn't go very far. But I was a little guy, and I was on the Emmons.
That was when your father was taking over command, wasn't it?
That is correct.
Yep.
It was in Boston at the Navy Yard in Boston.
So there's four of you here tonight who have been on the Emmons. The three shipmates and yourself.
There we are.
Okay, great, George. Thank you.
Okay.
Our last tradition we have at our Saturday evening banquet is to introduce and recognize all the shipmates in attendance. So I ask that when you hear your name, please unmute yourself and say hello. Share a few words if you like, but if you at least say hello, we'll have a chance to hopefully see you. We'll do. So I introduce to all of you, Tony Esposito.
Tony, say hello.
Hey, brought back my memory.
Great. Great to
And
see
he
you.
was, he's particularly happy that so many of his family members are here, his nephews, nieces, his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, West Coast and around the other side of the world. I saw somebody from Australia on before, so the Esposito family is well represented, and he's touched by that. So thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Say bye.
Hey, so long, Ed.
Thanks, Tony. George Flory. George, are you out there? Okay. Well, George, I know you made it for at least some of us tonight. We're grateful that you could be here with us. We love you. Hope to see you next year. And last, Grover McMichael.
Tom, I want to thank you for getting all the Emmons people together. It's been so nice to hear them talk about the greatest people.
Thank you, Grover.
I ever knew. And thank you, Tom, for this.
Thank you, Grover. It's great to see you, and I'm so glad you could make it here. I hope you're enjoying yourself out there on the West Coast.
Yeah, I'm living.
You look great.
They take good care of me.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Good seeing you again. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, the men of the USS Emmons. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. We hope you enjoyed yourselves. We hope to see many of you next September. And in the meantime, as we continue to fight this pandemic and get it behind us, just please remember, be informed, be smart, and be safe. Hope to see you next year. Goodbye, everybody.